Okay, in this tutorial we are going to go over your graphing practice classwork, homework, whatever we're going to call this. So our assignment that you're going to try by yourself, but because we haven't used Google Sheets before this year, I'm going to just show you how we can do this to make graphs. If while I go through this makes no sense to you, you don't want to deal with this, that is fine. I am completely fine with you graphing this freehand. You can just do it on notebook paper and do your best to try and make it accurate, and then just take pictures of that and upload it. But if you want to try doing this on Google Sheets, this is going to be something that we'll do throughout the year, and something that I think is a very valuable tool to make very nice, precise looking graphs very quickly. So when we do it like this, we know that everything is going to be accurate. We can customize it very nicely, copy and paste it into your documents. So this is a skill that I think is important, and while you're at home is a great thing that we can work on because we're on technology. So on Google Classroom, you have gotten two things. This document that looks long, but I promise it is not so bad. Let me quickly make this look a little nicer for you. So it looks like a very, very long assignment, but it's not. So this is just the instructions on like what data we're going to put into your spreadsheets to make your graphs. So we are going to make the three major types of graphs that we'll use this year. I didn't include a scatter plot because it's so similar to a line graph, but we will do scatter plots as well. So the first one, a bar graph, which we're going to use to compare different groups, and then we'll do a line graph, and then we'll make it a little bit trickier and try to add two lines to compare on the same graph. And then the third one, a pie chart, which is going to be our very simple one. So you will need this document and then also this blank spreadsheet, which you should see has, if you look at the bottom, and if you're on an iPad, it looks a little bit different. You'll have to look and then double click on the bottom to get to the different sheets. This is going to help us to separate the three graphs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just pull these up separately, which is what I recommend you do while you're working. Make two different windows. And if you're on a Chromebook, this works very nicely. You can just do split screen by dragging your window over to the side, and it'll automatically make it split screen for you. Unfortunately, I'm not on a Chromebook, so we'll do this messily. But I'm going to keep all these mistakes that I'm making in here so you can see how quickly to go through and that this is not so bad. So the first one we're going to do, let's look at our bar graph here. I'm going to pull this over a little bit more so we can read the whole thing. So our bar graph, like I said, is used to compare distinct groups. So these are not like we're recording a temperature over a period of time. We are not doing something that is connected in any way. This is when you want to compare, like, do people prefer dogs or cats? Or what did everybody eat for breakfast this morning? Or I think the practice that we did before was the populations of different towns. So the population of one town doesn't affect the other. So here, what we're looking at is crop viability, or how well did seeds grow to produce food. So Louisa planted seeds for each type of crop in her garden. However, only some of the seeds grew into seedlings, or little plants. So we're going to make a bar graph to show how many seedlings grew for each type of crop. So she planted 5 different crops: pumpkin, lettuce, tomato, squash, and zucchini. And then she recorded how many actually grew out of the 100 she did. So this one, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. We'll do the difficult way first, then I'm going to delete it and do the easy way. So if you are following along, you might want to wait until I show you the easy way. So the more tedious way, but still simple, is to just take your data and transfer it over by transcribing and saying pumpkin, enter lettuce, enter tomato, squash, and zucchini. So if you've never used a spreadsheet before, I should explain this first. I should have done it before I started writing in here. A spreadsheet is basically like an infinitely large, it's not actually infinite, but it's a gigantic data sheet. So you can have thousands of rows and thousands of columns in it. So you can put enormous amounts of data, and then you can just use it to organize them. You can use it to do calculations on it. You can use it to make graphs like we're going to do, or to do like find your averages. You can do all sorts of things, color code it. What we're going to use it for is just to make a simple table. So I'm just going to transfer the data over as if it is in this table here. So I'm going to put the heading of this column as my crops, and then list the crops below. And then number of seedlings was the title of my second column. Column B, my dependent variable. So now I'm going to put the numbers in. So each of these boxes is called a cell. You don't really need to know that, but if you're ever looking at tutorials, they'll say put something in the cell. So that's that. It looks like a little block or like a plant cell in here. Okay, so we have our data in, and then you'll see as I click on each cell or each box, you'll see that the column that it's in and the number that it's in highlight or turn a little bit darker. So the way that these cells are numbered or named is by the coordinate system that they're in. So it goes column first and then row. So this cell that says 91 is B3. These are not things you need to remember, but it's going to pop up when we start doing our charts. You'll see that it starts doing some weird Excel or spreadsheet language. For now, I don't want you to worry about it. It's something, if you haven't used spreadsheets before, it seems a little bit stressful. It's a lot of new information, so I want you to just focus on what we need for now. We'll gradually get into using Excel. So what we do now, we have our data in here. I told you I would show you the hard way. That was the hard way. What I'm going to do, if you want to select data, you can highlight the whole thing. So you click on one cell. If you are on a iPad or your phone, sorry, it took me a second, it's a little bit more difficult. You're going to click on it once, and then you'll see a little dot in the corner, and you'll have to drag that up to highlight. If not, you're going to just click down and highlight until everything's highlighted. And I'm going to clear this out so I can show you the easy way to put data in here, which is going to save us some time for our next two graphs. I'm going to delete it, and it all deletes. So I'm going to go back over to my document, and if you have this on your computer, you're going to highlight it, and then I'm going to copy it, show you. I just did Control-C, but for the sakes of the video, I copied it, and then I'm going to paste it in, and it puts it right in there. So it knows that this was a table, and you're putting it into a table, so it keeps everything perfectly there. So hopefully you waited until then for me to get the hard way out of the way. If you're having trouble with copy-paste on your iPad and shuffling between your apps, don't worry for now. We'll do like a little tutorial on that next week on just trying to get a little bit, like the tricks to make it a little simpler. It's not simple, but we'll get there. Okay, so at long last, we went through all of that to try and make this graph, and here's where it's going to be worth it. So the downside is you do have to input your information. If you copy paste, that's easy. If you had to do it by hand, it's kind of a pain. But what we're going to do now is going to make up for all that pain we went through. So we are going to highlight our data the same way as when I deleted it. Press down, drag, and you're going to go to this insert, and we're going to go all the way down here to chart. So that's what they're going to call a graph, is a chart, because sometimes it's not a, you could put something that's not a graph in there. But graphs are a type of chart, so we're going to put it there. It's going to think for a minute, see what they thought it was, and it'll pull up two things. So let me get rid of that document for a second. So it makes the graph for you. And you can see it makes a title, and what it does is just put your column titles as versus each other. So number of seedlings versus crop, which is fine for this. We don't need to worry about our title for today. We just worry about making the graphs. And it has selected a column chart or a bar graph, and this looks really good to me. So we always want that first line here. Our column 1 is always going to be our x-axis. This is our groupings or labels, and you always want your numbers up the side. So in a bar graph, you're going to have groups and then numbers or amounts. You always want the numbers on the y-axis. So that's going to be our trick for knowing where to put things. And then this all looked very nice. It can also put them as different things. So sometimes when we put data in, and it might happen for some of the other ones we do, it's kind of hit or miss on whether it gets it right. If they got it wrong, what happens is this chart editor should pop up when you put the graph in. If you accidentally close it like this, you can go back to it by clicking on this little menu button here, the more options dots. You click on it and go to edit chart, and it'll pop it right back up. So then we're going to go down. If they gave you the wrong type of chart, so let's say you got something like this and this was not what you wanted, you're trying to make a bar graph, you're going to click on chart type and choose the one you want. So the most frequently used are at the top. You can also choose any of these other ones here. Like I said, there's ones that are not graphs, which is why they put the chart thing in there. The other one that would be appropriate here, you could make it a bar chart, just if you want rows instead of columns. Sometimes you just want it to look different. I'm going to just leave it as the simple one, as the one it gave me first, because that's fine. And then for this assignment, that's it. That's all we are going to do. We have our beautiful little chart. If you wanted to, later on in the semester, when we're going to make lab reports, we can copy it and then paste it into you can turn it into a picture. You can copy and paste it into a Word document or a Google Doc, so you can export it and use it somewhere else. The last thing I'm going to show you that you can do, and this is literally just for fun, is you can change the colors. You can change, if I want this to be orange, I can do that. I can change the style. I can make it 3D if I want to make it look fancy. There's all sorts of things. If you want to play around with this, you can. But if not, we'll wait until a different day when we are together and we'll just play around and make fancy looking charts. So I'm going to put this back to how it looked when it gave it to me. So you'll see this is the comparison. If yours looks anything like this or that bar chart, you are doing great. If you followed these instructions and it did something crazy to your graph, leave it in there and then just put it as a comment, on the assignment as a private comment, and say, I don't know what happened to my seed bar graph. Can you look at it? And we'll figure out what happened. But you're going to try and make a chart like this. So we're going to move on to our line graph. And now that we've gone over the basics of how to put things in Google Sheets, this is going to go very quickly. I won't make you go through every single thing. And what we want here is our tiger shark population. So when we do a line graph, this is something where the data is changing over time. So you have one number that you're looking at that's going to change depending on time passing or some other variable that's going to move. So it could be temperature, like you want to see how loud a cricket is at different temperatures. That could be done with a line graph because the temperature is like a constant thing. Generally it's something, the trick that I tell my students is always, if you have numbers or something that could be done as a number, like we could put months as 1 through 12, If you have things where you have two sets of numbers you're comparing, so temperature, distance, time, all of those are going to be a line graph. If you have something that you cannot put into a number, like the type of vegetable, there's no number that represents tomatoes, it has to be a bar graph. Okay, so we're going to go to this tiger shark population. We are looking at the population of tiger sharks off the coast of Florida that was recorded over several months. So we want to graph this making a line graph. So I'm going to skip everything we did last time to show you the hard way. So once again, back on your spreadsheet, we're going to go to this second tab here, the shark line graph. And it's going to be just a blank new sheet so we don't accidentally mess up our seed data. I'm going to come back over here, highlight everything in here. I am going to copy it or Command C, and I'm going to paste it. And when you paste from a Google Doc, sometimes it puts this extra line at the top. That's not going to affect our data at all. If you don't like it, you can, if you right-click on it, delete the row, but it won't affect it. So I'm going to undo that to show you that we don't need to worry about it. So the first thing, we are going to try and make a single line graph. I said before that we're going to compare it to the number of nurse sharks at the same time and try and make a double line graph, but we'll do the easy one first. So a single line graph, our data looks a little bit different because it's in a horizontal chart or table instead of a vertical one like the vegetables. It doesn't matter. I purposely did it this way so you can see it doesn't matter how you put your data in, Sheets will figure it out. So we are going to, again, highlight all of our data. We're going to go to Insert Chart. This one might be tricky. So here we go. This one made the wrong type of chart because there weren't numbers here, because we chose, well, I chose to put the data in by the months the written way. It thinks that it's a bar graph or a column chart. So what we're going to do is to quickly change that. So instead, I want this to be a line graph. And here we are. So easy as that, that if it gives you the wrong one, you just go and switch it out. There are two types of line graphs you can choose. Well, there's actually a few more down here. Let's go through a couple of them. It doesn't matter for this. A lot of this is just preference, how you want it to look. As you get further along in science, there are going to be fields or professors or people who prefer one or the other. But we have our basic line chart here. So this is basically the points would be here, and I can have that pop up, but I'll wait for a second. So if I highlight it, you can see where the actual data points were, where those little bubbles are, and then they just draw a straight line between each one and connect them. This second one smooths it out, so you can see now we have like a nice curve. So this could be nice if you're doing something that definitely didn't like change over time. Like if we were graphing your height at different ages, we might want to do a smooth chart because we know you didn't go like a crazy thing. Or changing the speed of a car or something. Something that we know happens gradually. You could do it to a smooth one. It doesn't matter for this one. You can also put ones, some people really like the ones with area underneath. It can look really nice. Stacked area is not going to work for us while we have two different, until we get our second one. So I'm going to leave it again, sorry, as we did for the seeds. I'm going to leave it the basic way that Sheets will give it to you, so you know what it should look like. So for this one, remember, it gave us the wrong data once, but now we know for the second one. So this one, let me just minimize this again. If we look at the second part of the problem, it says the number of nurse sharks was also recorded for the time period, although the person who recorded, sorry, let me fix this now, who recorded the number was not as reliable as the person recording the tiger shark numbers. The following data was taken on nurse sharks. Use a different color to graph the nurse shark population on the graph. So this person missed a bunch of months, but we are going to use what they have. So if we look here, the month is fine. Obviously, the months are still in order. What I need to do is now we're not just looking at sharks, we're looking at two different species of sharks. So I am going to, before I add in the nurse sharks to this, we are going to go back and just alter some of the data so that it makes sense for the second one. So I'm actually, you don't need to do this if you don't want to. You can leave this guy here. It'll be fine. Actually, no, I'm not going to do this. Sorry, I was going to copy and paste and make a whole different data table, and then I realized I don't need to, and it's going to make it too complicated when it doesn't affect our results. All I'm going to do is to drag this guy, our first graph, a little out of the way so we can deal with our data. The thing I need to change is I don't want this to say number of sharks anymore. I want to be specific and say tiger sharks. And now I'm going to add nurse sharks. So this one I'm not going to copy paste in because the data is so sporadic, we don't have all of them. So all I'm going to do is for my nurse sharks row, I'm going to put in the numbers under the months they show up. So the first one was March, this was 60, April 52. Oh, and you can see it started graphing the data already. Sometimes it will and sometimes it will not. It might depend on what I put in here. So hold on, let me edit this because I want it to show that it doesn't do this. Okay. So I accidentally highlighted the extra row, so it started graphing it in there. If it does that, leave it because that's what we want it to do anyway. But I want to show you, in case it doesn't do that for you, how to manually do it. So I apologize if that part got confusing. My computer was too smart for this tutorial. July, we have 38. August, we have 20. And then she skips to November and December, where she had 14 and 11. And I don't know why I've decided this scientist was a woman who got these sharks. But that's how I'm narrating it. Okay, so as we look at it, we can see there are not a lot of nurse sharks in this area. There's a lot of tiger sharks, not a lot of nurse sharks. So this first graph is not letting me highlight it. So this first graph is just showing our tiger sharks per month. That's great, but now when I want to compare them, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, and we're going to see that a slightly different thing is going to happen. So I highlight all 3 rows. It doesn't matter that there are blanks here. It's just going to ignore that and connect April to July. So I'm going to go back to add chart. Oh no. And this way it didn't connect them all. But I think we can fix that. Okay, so row 2 are my labels, headers. This is perfect. My series. No. Okay, there is a way to do this that I haven't forgot. Don't remember off the top of my head on how to get these to connect. For now, we don't need to worry about it though. So there should be a line between August and November. If yours popped up that way, that's great. Nope. But this is fine. See, if we look at it here, it showed up the right way. I'm not going to waste your time trying to find the way to do that. This is fine for now. And if we have a time where that matters, we will come back to it. So we have our graph here. And then the last thing we want to do, so then just leave that. The last one is going to be probably the quickest and easiest one, is our pie chart. So these I think are the hardest to make by hand because you have to measure specific angles and get it all very precise. But on the computer it's very simple. So we are going to go to Jonah's pie chart at the bottom. We're going to leave our sharks behind. And then going back to these questions, if you want to answer these, I'll give you a couple bonus points. So what month you expect nurse sharks to be equal to the number of tiger sharks? Is there a time on your graph that you can tell they should be about the same? And then what does the graph tell you about the trends of both shark populations? So what predictions could you make, or what do you think was happening that caused the populations to look the way they did? Okay, our last one. Sorry, back to pie charts. So pie charts we use very rarely, but they can be effective. So we can only use a pie chart when we're talking about something that is parts of a whole. So this could be if you took a poll of students in class and asked them, how did you get to school this morning? And then you'd have to take everything as a fraction or a percent. So it works if there are several options and you have to pick one of them. You can always, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, I apologize. Anything that you can put into a pie chart, you can also put into a bar graph, not vice versa. Sometimes, like the seed one that we did first, you couldn't make a pie chart of that, but we could make a bar graph of this idea of how Jonah spent his day, and it would be fine. But we're going to make it a pie chart because I want you to see how easy it is to make it, especially compared to trying to do it by hand. So we are looking at how Jonah spent his day broken up by hours. We're going to turn it into a pie chart. So his 4 activities were sleep, school, homework, and free time, which we're going to assume is eating and getting dressed and everything like that. And we can see if you add these up, these do add up to 24. So we know that this is the whole day. So I am going to copy that. Do it so you can see it. We are going to go and paste it here. And again, it put that extra row, but it doesn't matter. And now there's nothing else we have to do. We are going to highlight and we're going to see if this one works. I don't know if I've ever had a pie chart pop up the first time, and here it is. So I'm just going to close this because it looks the way I want it to. What I like about this is especially when we have numbers that don't divide evenly, like if you were going to put this 6 hours of free time, this 25%, that's a very easy thing to draw when you're making a pie chart. But doing 12.5 and 29.2 and a third is okay. But ones that are a little bit off of like the fractions or the angles we kind of know about and how to draw, it can get really tricky to make an accurate pie chart. I hate doing them. So I really love this, and look how nice and colorful it is. It puts the percentages in there for you. It labels it so nicely. The one thing, I don't like this title, so I'm going to change it. You don't have to change it, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to change the title to anything you want. Jonah's Day is my title here. And then again, if you were to click on these, if you just double click, you can change the colors to make it look very nice. There are themes you can do that will like change it to a really nice color scheme. Again, we'll do that later. You don't need to spend your time doing it now. If you really love Excel or spreadsheets like I do, I'll put some tutorials up to show you how to do all this crazy stuff, but for now you're done. So there you go. There's your 3 types of charts in Sheets. I hope that didn't take too long for you. All you need to do is you don't need to copy and paste these anywhere. You don't need to do anything with the instructions unless you want those 2 extra credit options here. I'll give you 5 points total extra credit on this assignment, which is 25% extra credit. if you answer these correctly. Okay. Otherwise, all I'm looking for is, did you make a pie chart? Did you make a shark line graph? So I'm only really looking for this one. If you have both, that's great, but the second one is the one we want. Oh, we'll see how many people's worked correctly, like shows the connected lines, and how many did not. I'm going to work on this and see if we can get them connected. And then our bar graph from the beginning. This very nice bar graph. So that's all you have to do. Just make sure you click turn in once you're done with this on Google Classroom. I'll look over it. If any of your graphs didn't work, if it's this shark thing, don't worry about this because I'll look into it already. But if your bar graph didn't show up or it made it look funky, if it wouldn't let you do a real line graph or it mixed up your axes and your months are on the side, if something went wrong, just put that as a comment so I can look and see if we can figure out what happened. Otherwise, you're all set and you are ready for us to graph our own data starting next class.